Hello and welcome to this deep dive into the music and narration systems of our game Empires of the Undergrowth. My name's Dan and I'm the product marketing manager for Slug Disco, a small independent games company based here in the UK. We're the developers of Empires of the Undergrowth as well as publishers for a variety of nature-based games as well. Before I hand over to Liam, one of the game's directors, let's take a look at the trailer for the game.
Ants. They're organized, industrious, and hungry. But in the undergrowth, there's no such thing as a free lunch. In the end, only one colony will secure victory over the Outworld and take its place amongst the great empires of the Undergrowth.
Yeah, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of explain your role on the project and kind of what the project is?
Yeah, okay, so my name's Liam. I'm one of the developers working on Empires of the Undergrowth. I do lots of different things, but today we're primarily talking about music in the game. It's got a dynamic music system, so I'll be talking a little bit about that. The game is a real-time strategy game about ants, and it's still in development. And we're about to have a big update coming up with fire ants and some new music as well.
So one of the key things that kind of we feature in the game is the kind of documentary style narration system, and that's what you're going to show off today, right?
After taking significant losses in their efforts to subdue the Leafcutters, the Swarm Raiders have been pushed back. The Leafcutters must press on to keep them at bay.
Yeah, so I thought I'd talk a bit about how we got to that point as well, and the panic that led us there. When we started making the game, we didn't really know what the music was going to be. We actually started off down a kind of electro route, which changed to orchestral. And I had to make some demo music, and that was the first time we did something orchestral. But it was very simple. It was just a looping track, and I had all these ideas about we were going to have narration in the game. None of that was recorded yet, but we wanted to have the narration work with the audio. That was a technical and a musical challenge to figure out how to wrap those two things around each other. The first idea I had was to create lots of little small audio snippets, and this was a particularly bad idea, but I think it might be interesting to show some of that. Okay, so we've got these 4 audio files, and the idea was that one would play. And this is about 4 seconds long, and it's got this silence at the start, and it trails off at the end. And then the idea is that the system lines these up, so you'd sort of have. Let's see if I can get this right. So you've got this kind of seamless transition from this little sound file to this little sound file. And the idea was that the game would control which one was going to play next, and there'd be several options. So it could become calmer, it could become more scary, it could become happy, it could become sad. And I was working on this for a long time, but two problems came up, 2 big problems. One was that it was a huge amount of work. So I can show you. I've got a spreadsheet here, which sort of demonstrates how the game would see the audio files. So there's all these audio files down here on the left, and for every audio file, there's a destination where it can go to, and it'd pick, like, if it's trying to get to something more scary, it'd go from this ambient one to number 24. So number 24 is here. Some of these aren't filled in, but it would go from 24 to here, and then down to one of these big ones, and then it'd start looping around here, which is where it wanted to land. And what this meant was I had to make hundreds of these little audio clips, just for one song. I'd gotten to the point where I'd maybe managed to do, I think I'd done 1.5 songs, and we were 4 months away from an early access release. So that was a problem. The other problem was they weren't always playing at the right time. So if you can imagine the game's running, and it's every 4 seconds it's been told to play a different sound file, and it's been told to do this on something called the game thread, which is all of the instructions in the game. So everything's happening on a frame by frame basis, and if you've got a good computer, you've got high frame rate, and if your computer's not so good, or our code is particularly unoptimized, you've got a bad frame rate. And so you can't control exactly when this order to play the next sound file goes off. And then on top of that, you can't also control when that order is received to start playing it. And the effect was that maybe 60% of the time it'd play nice and smooth like this. But then 40% of the time you get this going on. And I found that particularly painful, and I was trying to deal with it for a good while, and we came to the conclusion that we needed to write some code that worked directly with a different thread, so away from this game thread. And we didn't know how to do that. It's probably a simple task for a skilled programmer, but we were 4 months away from this release, and we had no idea how to do this. I didn't want to invest the time to learn how to do it and take the risk that I wasn't going to figure it out. Matt, our lead programmer, was far too busy with other things. We were actually a bit stuck, and I was close to just having music files that loop. And then it was really lucky. We were using this social media app called Stomped at the time, and one of the founders of the company that made Stomped, called Philip, he was so helpful. He was always asking, if he can help us out with anything. And I don't know why, because because I wouldn't have expected him to be able to help with this at all. But I think I moaned to him at one point that I was having these problems, and he said, "Oh, there's another game that's using Stomped. It's like a social media platform for video games, for indie games particularly at the start. And they're making a game. There's another developer. They're making a game that's heavily music based." And he put me in touch with a guy called Isaac, who was working on a game called All Walls Must Fall. And it had this music system where the music was timed based on what the player did. And he was very kind to have a chat with me. And what I learned from that was he really knew his stuff. He knew Unreal Engine much better than I did at the time. But he also hadn't solved the problem, and that was kind of a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. A good thing in the sense that this other game that was heavily based around music, they felt like, this isn't such a huge problem that some of the music files are playing a few milliseconds late. But it was bad in the sense that this expert hadn't solved the problem, and so I had even less of a chance of managing it. But he helped me out with something very specific. There's a function in Unreal Engine that could return how long a sound file had been playing once it started playing. And this was sort of the magic heart of the bodge that was to be. So I could play a sound and then find out exactly how long that sound had been playing for after I'd started playing it. So not how long since I told it to play, but how long it had actually been playing for. I could start playing a new sound and then check if it was where I thought it should be. And if it wasn't, I could play it again. And so that's now how the music in Empires of the Undergrowth still works to this day. At the start of a level, it will play a sound over and over and over until it's at the right point. And that's why there's this silence at the start of these tracks. So I've got 1 second here. Even if you're at 15 frames a second, you've got 15 chances to get the sound right before you even hear it. So that's what's going on in the background. The other problem, of course, was that this was taking ages. So I actually simplified this down a lot. And instead of having it constantly playing these different tracks, it just plays 7 looping tracks. And so the only problem, it was still the same problem. It just meant that we just had 7 tracks and they all had to start at the same time. Okay, so this is what a song in Empires of the Undergrowth looks like now. All these different layered tracks. So I've got ambience at the top. I've got this the transition. Then there's action 1, action 2, and then there's this highlight 1, highlight 2. These work in I think there's a lot of games that do this where the sound files playing on top of each other and they crossfade in and out. And the great thing about this is once they're playing, they stay in sync because they loop automatically. The only trick is to make sure all 7 start at the same time. If they don't start at the same time, then your music's sounding terrible. You've got that out of sync problem consistently for the whole game. So I'll just give it an example of how some of this sounds. They can't all be playing at the same time, otherwise it sounds terrible. There we go. Let's say you start the game and you've got this ambience, and we want to get a little bit more. I don't know. The ants are starting to fight a beetle. So what we're going to do is we'll unmute this, and this will start to be brought in. This will go out. Now, there's something else that this does. This is you'll see here there's these little bits of silence, and they allow us to unmute sections without having to be completely accurate with our volume controls. So what we do is in one of these silent areas, instead of fading it in, we just unmute that, and we don't have to be accurate at all because we've got several seconds to do that. And then this music kicks in, we can unmute this one. We can unmute this one. So what we've done there is we've made the music sort of more and more intense, but we haven't had to use sort of fading sliders because it doesn't sound as natural. If I was to fade that in, it sounds okay, but it doesn't sound like a real orchestra. And of course, because we've got this timing problem, we wanted to make the fade very instant. So if you haven't got the perfect timing and you bring this volume up really quickly, you might be a little bit late, a little bit early, so you have that same problem again. So we've got these areas of silence, and now this is the real trick here. Let me grab some narration.
These leaves are contested. The leaf cutters will generally not attack unless provoked, but tonight there is too much at stake.
Okay, that's good. So let's say you're playing the game and this sound needs to play, and we want the music to become more intense once it's finished. So the idea here is that this narration finishes and then the music becomes more intense. So so let's say we're playing the game, and at this point in time here, we realize that the narration needs to start playing. So the narration code is told we need to play this bit of narration, and then that checks on the music and says, do you mind if we play it 3 seconds later? And then it turns out that that's not a big deal for the game. It's not going to affect the player that much. So it pauses the narration, cues it for 3 seconds, and then it'll start playing here. And what that does is it gives the impression that the music is fitting around the narration, or the narration's fitting around the music. It sort of becomes part of it, because it ends just as something cool kicks in here.
Will generally not attack unless provoked, but tonight there is too much at stake. Only a strong show of force will deter the opposing colony.
You can see that kicks in there, and then if you want it even more impactful, this one would be off as well.
Only a strong show of force will deter the opposing colony.
Okay, so that's essentially how it works. The only other thing in here that's interesting is the queen being in danger. This just fades in and out, and it sounds particularly horrific you've got a queen in the game. It's your queen ant, and if she dies, you lose the game. So if there are some creatures that are near the queen, there's like a proximity alert, and we know that there's something dangerous near the queen. The music changes. This doesn't use this sort of silent, non-silent system. It just fades straight in, and then this would. And then now the queen's under attack. Pretty awful. And then if we bring this out, and now you've defeated the danger to the queen. This is probably better demonstrated in the game, so you can get an idea of what's actually happening.
Predators are loose in the nest. The larvae must be protected.
Okay, so these little beetles are coming straight from the queen.
The queen is in imminent danger.
You see the music's changed. And now, if we deal with them before the queen gets killed. So the music isn't quite as... it's still scary, but it's not dissonant anymore. So we get the feeling that the queen's okay for now. So it sounds quite nice when you come out of that. The idea is it's very, very unpleasant for the player, so they know that something definitely wrong. And then you get the satisfying moment once you've killed the creatures. The music sounds quite triumphant after that.
So there you have it. That was a look at the music and narration system that Liam implemented into Empires of the Undergrowth. If you're a fan of the game, I hope that was a bit insightful as to kind of how the game works. And if you're an audio engineer who has a passion for games, hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into what you could do in your games in the future. If you want to check out the game, there is a free demo available, and that offers a good look at the mechanics of the game. If you want to stay up to date with all things Empires of the Undergrowth, you can follow us on our social media, or better yet, come join us over on our Discord. Thanks for watching. Bye.